You see, if we'd like to understand something or someone better, deeper, we have to look at the big picture, the background, the tendencies, the sensitivities, the dynamics of it all. So, in order for me to make you better understand this Utang universe, I think it's best if we get a good grasp of the plight of Filipinos as far as money matters are concerned. So let's begin with Standard and Poor's. S&P tells us that 75% of Filipinos, 3 out of 4 Filipinos are financially illiterate. Ano ibig sabihin nito? This means that we know how to add, we know how to subtract. We were graded as to how good we are in memorizing the multiplication table. We know how to divide numbers, but we don't know how to multiply actual money. We don't know how to make our money grow. We don't know how to make our money work, and that's what makes us generally a financially illiterate country. Um, uh, Most of us think that it's enough that we have a stable, competitive paying job. That we don't. But what we don't understand is that's just one side of the story. That's just uh, enough to allow us to earn money. Earning is one thing, saving is another, investing is a totally different thing. But it is what it is. 75% of Filipinos are financially illiterate. This brings me to the fact that according to the Asian Development Bank, 80% of Filipinos don't have financial plans. Guys, I'm not talking about a formal, written, notarized piece of document. I'm just talking about a plain and simple plan. Better yet, a budget. So that we know what we're supposed to do with money. Employed individuals know that they're going to receive something from their employers at least twice a month. You have bonuses, you have holiday pay, you have perhaps profit sharing, you have other forms of benefits and incentives. But let's admit it, if we don't know what we're supposed to do with money, chances are we're going to end up spending most, if not all of it. And again, that's reality. And that's why, according to the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, because of our struggles when it comes to financial illiteracy, because we don't have plans, we don't budget money. According to our very own, no less than the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas, 90% of Filipinos, or 9 out of 10 Filipinos, don't have savings. If you're going to ask them, ask yourselves, ask your friends, ask your family members, ask random strangers, would you like to save? Do you want to have savings? The answer would absolutely be 100% yes. But the fact is, only 10% of us can afford to save. Again, it really all boils down to financial illiteracy and the lack of financial planning. And if we're going to look at, if we're looking at that many people who are not able to save, then surprise, surprise, 97% to 98% of Filipinos are not making their money work for them. 97, 98% of Filipinos are not investing in our very own stock market. That's why, according to SSS, 97% of Filipinos still end up retiring poor. So imagine all those years you've spent studying, all those years we've spent studying, reviewing, trying to pass our subjects, trying to graduate, all those years spent working, all those times spent away from family. Still, at the end of the day, a good 97% of us still retire poor. Why? Again, let me go back. 75% of Filipinos are financially illiterate. 80% of us don't have plans when it comes to money. That's why 90% of us don't have savings. 99% of us don't invest. Plain and simple. So that's essentially why we're doing things like this, because we'd like to teach We'd like to share what we know. We'd like to influence more and more Filipinos to be responsible when it comes to money. We'd like to influence more and more Filipinos to be aware of their investment options. And we're trying to do that one webisode at a time. So, um, uh, again, despite all these staggering, saddening numbers, um, don't fret, because again, we still have enough time. We can still do something about it. And at least for this webisode, I'm going to try to make you understand how a bad utang differs from a good utang, and ultimately make you understand that not all utangs are created equal. So it may be quite discouraging for people to save because our money is only growing by so much. When I say so much, I'm just talking about 0.125% before tax. 0.125% before tax. That's for your regular savings account. Best case, 1.25% for your preferential rate when it comes to time deposits. But again, not everyone can afford to get that preferential rate because of the uh, uh, high amount requirement. So there, Filipinos need to understand that borrowing money also has a cost. So we're trying to slowly step into the world of utangs. When you borrow money, remember that when you borrow money, you're going to have to repay the bank uh, with interest charges because you're going to get charged with interest. That sum of money will be used then to repay their depositors. So if you're trying to deposit something, you're in 0.125%. But if you're trying to borrow something from the bank, you're going to get charged by that same bank somewhere between 5, 8, 9, 10%. So the difference between the interest uh, the difference between the interest rate charges charged against borrowers versus the interest rate earnings depositors get from the bank is what we call the interest rate differential or the spread. And this is essentially how banks make money. So there, my point really is all these things result to one thing and one thing alone, that there's not much money in the pockets of Filipinos. Um, uh, and a lot of times when we are in financial trouble, we resort to borrowing. And whether we admit it or not, especially in the Philippines, especially in the Filipino culture, having to loan, having to borrow, if you had debt, liability, it carries with it a negative connotation. Whatever you may call utang, it's often frowned upon. Madalas if malalaman ng mga tao na meron kang utang, ang iniisip agad nila is you're struggling financially. You don't know how to manage money. But again, that's a negative connotation. That's also something I'm going to try to demystify because again, not all utangs are created equal. Now, for some reason, when you borrow money, it's automatically assumed that again you're struggling financially, you need help, you're in serious trouble. But again, that's not always the case. What we don't realize is at the other end of the spectrum, because of the relative ease of borrowing money, Filipinos often resort to utang as a means to get by, at least until the next payday. This webisode is intended to make you understand that not all utangs are created equal, and that at the end of the day, what sets a good utang from a bad utang relies heavily on the very reason why we're borrowing in the first place. You don't just loan, you don't just borrow just because you'd like to loan, you'd like to borrow. You're supposed to attack it with a plan. You're supposed to think about it. Do you really need to borrow? Do you really need to get into this type of transaction? So again, these are the things that we're going to talk about over the course of this webisode. Um, uh, Again, my name is Andoy, and I will talk about everything you need to know why I think not all utangs are created equal. Now, even if we limit our household expenses, even if we try to budget or limit our expenses to the basics, I'm talking about food, I'm talking about shelter, I'm talking about clothing, life is already expensive as it is. Then reality sets in that life is more than just that. That you need to spend on transportation, you need to spend on telecommunication, especially now that most of us are working from home. Our kids are studying from home, so telecoms, internet, it's a necessity. Of course, education, and from time to time, vacation. Then you need to think about getting an insurance for life and non-life protection. You need to think about uh, accumulating money for savings and emergency funds, and eventually growing your wealth by investing. And because we don't prioritize getting insurance, we don't prioritize saving and investing, our current situation allows for a very, very tiny room for error. That in times of medical emergency, that in times of shutdown or lockdown, that in times of loss of income or perhaps unemployment, we immediately find ourselves in deep, deep financial trouble. And life is just bound to get more expensive because of, again, inflation, something I've talked about during the start of this webisode. Um, uh, what we don't take advantage of is the fact that it's actually easier for us to make money while we are young. I need you to understand that you need to save and invest while you are still making money. We don't make it a habit to think about the future. You know, a lot of Filipinos are too comfortable relying on utang that it's already embedded in our lifestyle. Despite the obvious efforts of the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas to make it easier for Filipinos to open bank accounts, most of the bigger banks are now giving Filipinos the opportunity to open accounts without having to go physically to their branches because of digital banks. No? Despite the obvious efforts of BSP to make it easier for Filipinos to open bank accounts, we all know for a fact that it's much easier for us to gain access to loans compared to savings. Even if we don't need to borrow money for some reason, we find ourselves at the receiving end of SMS or text messages offering quick, hassle, and collateral free loan application. There are even mobile app based borrowing platforms with very, very minimal requirements. Now, it's one thing that we provide Filipinos with the tools. Um, it's another that we teach them how to use them properly. Um, if you ask me, money, whether earned or borrowed, money, whether saved or taken out from a loan, can be a very, very powerful weapon. It can be a very, very powerful tool. That's why I keep on telling you that not all utangs are created equal. It's very important that you understand what are the options you have in order for you to convert your utang to a good one instead of falling into the trap of having to pay for a huge sum of money without you benefiting from it. All right. So let's try to plug in numbers for me to be able to better make you understand, for me to be able to make you better appreciate my point. Let's try to plug in numbers. Say you love shoes as much as I do. Um, uh, after everything said and done, after let's say malls start operating 100%, you come across a fantastic online sale, despite malls not operating 100%. So you go online. Uh, you're afraid to catch the virus by going outside, so you do your online shopping. You do your shopping online, and then you come across a fantastic 50% discount on that pair of shoes you've long been wanting to purchase. So regular price of 20,000 pesos, it's now priced at a whopping 10,000 pesos, so 50% discount. But the catch is you don't have cash. It's not that you can't afford to buy it, but you just don't have cash. You don't have enough cash for you to be able to make the purchase. So in true Pinoy fashion, you make that purchase using your credit card. The teller asks you if you're going to pay straight or if you're going to pay in tranches or installment. Paying straight is as good as paying in cash, but at a later date, perhaps after 15 days, after a month, depending on the time of your transaction. You get charged with the entire amount, and you're supposed to pay usually after X number of days. Again, after several days, after several months. Some credit card companies even offer up to 3 months worth of grace period for you to be able to make that payment. So paying in tranches will mean that you're going to split that amount. You're going to split a certain amount in either 3, 6, or 12, sometimes up to 24 months, but more often than not comes at a price. You're going to have to pay extra in the form of interest or finance charges. So instead of paying straight 10,000 pesos, you go with a 12-month installment of just about 950 pesos per month. Again, psychologically speaking, it may sound like a bargain. It's cheaper than spending 10,000 pesos in one go. But if you're going to do the math, at 950 pesos per month for 12 months, that means you're going to eventually have to pay an extra 1,038 pesos for a 10,000 peso pair of shoes. What you don't see is that over the course of the year, that's an extra 1,038 pesos. The true cost of money may be more than it's worth. The cost of your shoes is now 11,038 pesos. Again, after 12 months of paying off 950 pesos off of your credit card versus its actual worth of just 10,000 pesos. And mind you guys, this is under the assumption that your credit card company charges you only 1.6% a month. Some credit card companies charge 1.9 to 3% at best. So it's best that you know how much your credit card company charges you with. The point here is, had you been a little bit more patient, had you been a little bit more responsible by saving up, you would have still ended up with that pair of shoes, but would have spent less. There may be buy now pay later schemes, but to me, what this does is encourage responsible purchases. People take advantage of the flexibility in payment terms, but along with it comes a huge risk because you'll end up getting slapped with a higher interest rate for failed payments, not to mention annual fees, which come in thousands. So guys, please don't get me wrong. I'm not discouraging you from getting credit cards. I'm not discouraging you from applying for credit cards. I'm not discouraging you from maintaining your credit card facility. In fact, credit cards are, again, a very useful tool if you know how to take advantage of it. If you know the difference between a good utang and a bad utang. All right. So borrowing can be quick and easy, but getting out of debt can be very tricky. Again, it's super easy to borrow money. It's super easy to swipe credit cards. Some EMV credit cards no longer need to be swiped. It just needs to be tapped onto the point of sale terminal or POS terminal. So it has been made easier. Transacting via credit cards has been made easier. But again, at the end of the day, it's very important that we're responsible when it comes to where we use our money. Paying in cash makes us think twice. That's why I encourage my friends, encourage my family members that if they have huge purchases, they pay in cash so that they think twice if it's really something they need, if it's really something worth their money. Um, it makes us prioritize our expenditures. It makes us think about the repercussions should we give in to an impulse purchase, for example. This is not a case of just wants versus needs. This is a case of making the most out of your money. The extra 1,000 pesos, for example, that you spent for that pair of shoes, the extra 1,038 pesos could have easily been diverted to your grocery budget, for an insurance premium payment, for example, for emergency funding. The extra 1,000 pesos could have been used to pay off a purchase, but instead could have been used to create more money by investing it elsewhere, by making it grow, by putting it into assets or investment vehicles. Which brings me to my main point: good utang versus bad utang. Not all utangs are created equal. A good utang is the kind that helps you and your money increase in terms of worth. It's a kind of utang that helps you progress both personally and professionally. It's the kind of utang that puts into consideration your future, not just now, but your future, your family's future, your goals moving forward. A good utang, for example, is a multi-purpose loan to fund paper investments to create a new source of income. You borrow for the purpose of you being able to take advantage of the current stock market dip. You borrow money for you to be able to take advantage of IPOs. You borrow money for you to be able to take advantage of the huge drop in the share prices of your favorite listed corporation. So that's one good type of utang. A good utang, for example, is a personal loan to buy a laptop to start a small online business, or for you to be able to attend online classes, or for you to be able to attend graduate classes, coding classes, whatnot. It's meant for you to become a better person. It's meant for you to become a better professional. It's going to increase your market value. It's going to increase your employability. It's going to provide you with upskills, the opportunity to upskill. What else? A good utang, for example, is a housing loan mortgage instead of rental payments, because a housing loan mortgage could end up being more expensive, but it eventually leads to home ownership. A good utang is trying to acquire money to make more money. Open a deposit account and earn interest, invest in bonds and get capital appreciation and coupon payments, buy stocks and get price appreciation and dividends, buy a property and earn from rent, lease, and land value appreciation, invest in real estate investment trusts and get capital appreciation and regular dividends, invest in ETFs and get price appreciation and from time to time stock dividends. Real estate investing may be a drain in cash flow, but it is a time-tested asset and does not lose demand. When you talk about real estate, more and more people demand real estate properties. More and more people save and invest for them to be able to acquire real estate properties. But Mother Earth is not producing more real estate properties. So that's why it's very, very challenging. Small supply, higher and higher demand. That's why real estate prices are shooting up, because more and more people are looking to buy properties, but less and less properties are made available for Filipinos. Now, how do we spot a good utang? I've just told you a number of examples, but generally speaking, how do we spot a good utang? First off, a good utang provides you an opportunity to increase the value of your money. A good utang is not just an utang that you apply for just because you are qualified to borrow. They don't do that. A good utang should be able to provide you with an opportunity to make that sum of money make more money, especially in the long run. A good utang allows you to get an asset with a longer lifespan versus the actual loan. So let's say you borrowed the sum of money when Ang Provinciano was just debuting, and you were able to pay it off after a year and a half, and Ang Provinciano is still airing. It's still being shown online after all these years, pandemic and all. So there's a good example. There's a good testament to the Ang Provincianos immortality, so to say. A good utang should allow you to get an asset or acquire an asset with a longer lifespan versus the loan. But seriously though, I'm talking about acquiring, let's say, real estate property, a real estate property that you've been paying off for 10 years, and if you take care of that property, if you use quality materials, if you regularly do the upkeep, by the time you're done paying off your housing loan after 10 years, most probably that structure, that property will still be there in something that you can still use for the next 20, 30, 40, 50 years. So that's a good kind of utang. Next, leverage. In terms of cost benefit analysis, this is the benefit of the asset outweighing the cost you've paid for it. The cost of your construction, for example, may have been valued at 2 million pesos, but the benefit of having that real estate property under your ownership will most likely outweigh that cost, because so over the span of X number of years, 5, 10, 15, 20 years, your real estate property will most probably be worth more than that 2 million pesos. Again, talk about leverage, or in terms of cost benefit analysis, the benefit of you borrowing to acquire a certain asset, to acquire a certain investment vehicle, should be able to outweigh the cost you've paid for it. In fact, just so you know, bonds are actually a form of utang. Just a quick side trip. Bonds are actually utangs. Bonds are a loan to a company or to the Philippine national government for a fixed number of years, paying fixed interest. That's why we call bonds as fixed income instruments or fixed income vehicles. It gives us better returns than cash. It gives us better returns than money market. It gives us better returns than your regular deposits, because apart from giving investors a fixed stream of income by way of coupon payments, it also gives the principal back to the lender by the time the bond matures. So again, that's something worth noting. An investment vehicle in the form of bonds, revolving around the concept of utang or debt. All right. Because bonds are certificates of indebtedness, just like any other utang, we run the risk of not getting paid back. Between corporate bonds and government bonds, your money is safer with government bonds, because worst comes to worst, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas can always print money to pay off its obligations. Corporate entities don't have this fallback option. That's why if you're going to Google it, wala kayong makikita na government bond na nag-default. Wala kayong makikita na government bond na nalugi. Because again, worst comes to worst, the Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas can always print money to pay off its obligations. That is also the reason why corporate bonds give relatively higher returns compared to government bonds. They make it more attractive for investors. Again, even within the realm of bonds, even within the universe of bonds, the saying, the higher the risk, the higher the return, still holds true. When it comes to maturities, there are short, medium, and long-term bonds. Short-term bonds are called bills. Medium-term bonds are called notes. while long-term bonds are called, well, bonds. Ideally, the longer the term, the higher the investors should be paid back. If cash grows your money by way of interest earnings, if deposits grow your money by way of interest earnings, bonds provide us with multiple streams of income from capital appreciation and periodic coupon payments. Again, not to mention the principal being given back as soon as the bond matures. All right. Now, let's go to bad utang. A bad utang is the kind that you avail without a clear purpose. Just so wrong. Sounds wrong because it's really wrong. A bad utang is the kind that you avail just because, again, maybe you're eligible because you have the requirements. You don't do that. Um, uh, it's very important to understand that when you borrow money, there's cost to it. You're going to eventually have to repay that loan back, and you're going to be charged with interest. So that's the cost of borrowing money. Um, uh, you need to have a clear plan, and you also need to have a clear source of repayment. So why are you borrowing in the first place? And should you intend to borrow, do you have enough money to repay that sum of money over the lifetime of the loan? All right. For example, a low down payment car loan looks very, very attractive because you just need to shell out what, 25,000 pesos, and you get to bring home a motor vehicle just like that. But it carries with it high monthly amortization. It's okay if you're getting a car to help you get to work, or if it will be used for business purposes, but you're setting yourself up for financial trouble if you're just doing it to look cool. Bad utang. A bad utang is spending money on stuff that you don't actually need. A good measure, a good review, if a good self-assessment, if you will, uh, to know that you've made a bad purchase or a bad utang is the fact that you feel guilty after purchasing something. You feel guilty after applying for a loan because, again, you know yourself better than anyone else. Do you really need this? Is it something that you really need? Is it something that you can live without? So again, self-assessment. Um, Another thing for you to identify a bad utang from a good utang is buying stuff just for you to show off. A bad utang is trying to acquire money just to pretend that you actually have money. Again, let me repeat that. A bad utang is spending money on things that you don't actually need. And a bad utang is trying to acquire money, of course, through loan by borrowing, just to pretend that you actually have money. It's a bad kind of utang. Just for you to look cool. Just for you to look cool, just for you to look rich. That's a bad kind of utang. Now, how do you spot a bad utang? Again, these are just some of our examples, but how do you spot a bad utang? A bad utang is something that makes your money depreciate in value. Umutang ka, and then hindi mo naman ininvest. Umutang ka tapos hindi mo siya napalago. So malulugi ka because, again, there's cost to borrowing money. For every 100 pesos that you borrow, you're going to have to pay an extra 5, 8, 9, 10 pesos. And that's a lot, especially when you talk about borrowing in hundreds of thousands, when you talk about borrowing in millions of pesos. A bad utang is an utang wherein the asset life is shorter than the loan. So remember our provinciano example. But a bad utang, for example, is you buying a substandard or borrowing or loaning or swiping a credit card purchase for a substandard mobile phone, for a substandard gadget, just for you to flaunt on Instagram, just for you to flaunt online that you've bought a new gadget. There's also a bad utang because of the presence of negative leverage. If we talked about positive leverage with good utangs, you have negative leverage with bad utangs because the cost is more than the actual benefit. You buy the top of the line mobile phone, even if you still have a perfectly functioning one. You pay using your credit card for about 24 months. The very second you step out of the shop, the value of your brand new phone is already depreciated. You can't resell it to the market for at market value. The only way you can sell it in the secondary market, even if it's still sealed, even if it's still brand new, even if you have yet to use it, is for you to price it below the market value. Because bakit nga naman bibili sila? Bakit ako bibili sa second hand? Bakit ako bibili sa tao if I can buy a legit brand new, still with warranty, still with boxes and everything, with freebies perhaps if I go directly to the store. So that's a bad kind of utang. Again, the second you step out of the shop, the value of your brand new phone is already depreciated. You can't sell it at a higher price than what you've paid for. You can't even sell it at cost. And in a few months' time, the value of your phone will surely outweigh its benefits and your level of satisfaction, more importantly, because chances are next year, there's going to be a newer, better, faster model available in the market. All right. So let me say it again. Money, whether earned or borrowed, can be a very useful weapon if used correctly. All right. Don't ever look at debt as just a liability. The savvy investors look at debt as a source of cash flow. Again, talk about bonds as an investment vehicle, a lifeline and an opportunity to create more wealth. If you're willing to wait until your savings, and investments rake in all the profits for you to acquire, for example, a real estate property, you might never acquire an asset with a potential to bring you cash flow while you're still working, while you're still young, receiving salary with growing portfolio of various investments. I myself, I built my first house at age 25, and it was during that time when I started to become more financially responsible because I knew I am legally liable to pay off my mortgage every month. You start thinking about a milyar. You try to pay ahead of time to get that 15% discount. So yung mga hacks, no, you start learning them just for you to save money. You start thinking about upkeep and repairs to prolong the life of your house. And now, from time to time, I do a little real estate build and sell on the side because apart from stock market investing, apart from trading, I find real estate investing also quite profitable. All right. So any which way you look at it, from a personal or a business standpoint, growing money without borrowing money can be likened to cooking without petroleum, without liquefied petroleum gas or LPG. LPG can be very dangerous, but if used properly and with caution, we can reap all sorts of benefits. Harnessing the power of good debt will always be to our advantage. If you are responsible enough in spotting good opportunities, and if you are aware of your options, acquiring more and more good utangs will eventually allow you to spoil yourselves eventually and from time to time with bad utangs. More shoes, getting that weekend car, building that rest house. They will eventually be paid for by the proceeds of your investments made possible by good utangs. The reason why the poor remains poor is largely because of bad utang. The reason why the rich keeps on getting richer is because they leverage on good utang. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is why I think not all utangs are created equal.